Hello and welcome to Social Listening, an introduction to tuning into online conversations. This webinar is brought to you by the National Institute for Social Media. Thank you for joining us. My name is Margaret Stewart and I'll be your facilitator. I'll start by sharing a little bit with you about my background before we get started. I'm currently a social media strategist and trainer for the National Institute for Social Media. I'm also an assistant professor of communication studies at the University of North Florida and a consultant for Socially Inspired. I have my doctorate in communications, media, and instructional technology from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, better known as IUP, and I have my Master of Arts in Professional Communication from LaSalle University in Philadelphia. I've been teaching for 10 years. 2017 marks my 10th year in the classroom, and in some ways I feel like I am still very new to teaching, and in other ways I feel like I've been teaching forever. One thing that I truly love about this profession is the opportunity to continue learning new things every day, and I really like having the chance to share my knowledge with others. I've been researching the subject of social listening for the last 2 years, and I'm really excited to share the information that I've gathered on the subject with you. This year I've had the opportunity to publish several papers on social listening. I've published in the International Journal of Customer Relations, Marketing and Management, and the Journal of Digital and Social Media Marketing. I'm also preparing to be published in the International Journal of Listening, which will be discussed a little bit later in this presentation. I encourage you to learn more about me on Socially Inspired's website, and I've included that web address at the bottom of the slide for you. To get us started, let's look at social listening from a broad view. Social listening is like joining an online conversation and attending a very large cocktail party. Ultimately, when we attend a party, we typically walk into the venue and we take a look around. We tend to absorb a lot of the sights and sounds and scenes around us. We tend to make observations about who's in the room, what types of conversations are happening, and which types of people and conversations we want to gravitate ourselves towards. Imagine this experience on a level that is multiplied enormously. And this is what's occurring constantly in the social media landscape. People either like or dislike brands and companies, products and services, and they talk about these preferences a lot. There's a tremendous amount of conversation happening at all times in the online universe. And so there's a great opportunity with all this electronic word of mouth to harness it as a powerful tool in your professional social media strategy. The ability to share information, content, and opinion online immediately, and the ability for content to go viral so quickly is a professional game changer. So social listening is defined as an active process of attending to, observing, interpreting, and responding to a variety of stimuli through mediated electronic and social channels. So some background on this definition. Myself and my colleague, Dr. Krista Arnold, came up with this definition in 2015. The term social listening has been used by practitioners of social media strategy for several years now. However, in the academic space, there's been no published definition of this term to date. So we took the opportunity to review a series of literature coming from social media strategy, listening studies, computer-mediated communication, and communication studies. And ultimately, a thorough review of this literature helped us to create this definition. We built this definition off of the definition for traditional listening, which we'll share with you in a few minutes. But the focus here is the opportunity to listen using mediated and social channels, to be tuned in at all times. And we're able to do this whether we're an individual, an organization. We're able to listen to these conversations online and gather an incredible amount of intelligence and information about individuals and groups. This definition is in an article that is currently in press with the International Journal of Listening. And so this piece will be published in the fall of 2017. We also presented this paper at the 2016 Florida Communication Association Convention in Orlando, Florida, and it received the Top Paper Award in Competitive Scholarship. So we were really excited to see how well this was received by our academic peers, and we're eager to introduce this definition to practitioners as well, to continue to qualify social listening. So we mentioned before that the definition is derived from the traditional listening definition. And so here we just want to take a moment to compare the two. Wolven and Coakley, 1996, defined listening as the process of receiving, attending to, and assigning meaning to oral and visual stimuli. And so the original listening process acknowledges auditory and visual senses are used during the listening process. Social listening acknowledges all of these aspects, but then also reflects the evolving process that involves acknowledging the role of technology and mediated communication. So social listening seeks to capture the fact that as our communication vehicles evolve, our listening process needs to evolve as well. As a result, social listening is highly personal. It's a very complex process and a multifaceted process. As we know, listening is a complex activity. And so social listening certainly acknowledges all of these aspects of the traditional listening process and just seeks to extend to a contemporary mediated communication climate as we become very reliant on our mobile devices, as we tend to rely more on, video content and dialogue through comment threads and things of this nature. Social listening wants to capture all of those listening opportunities through this online space. So one last area that we need to qualify is social listening versus monitoring. So in the practitioner space, we often hear the term social media monitoring. On the academic side, I've heard the term social surveillance used, and social listening. And typically each of these terms has been used interchangeably. I've made observations, but in our paper, we actually contend that monitoring and listening are different. It's not that one is necessarily better than the other, but we just acknowledge them as two different processes. Listening is a human process, and as a result of being a human process, it's very personal and it requires active participation. Monitoring is a more passive and impersonal process, involves more of a less active role, and involves more observational qualities than responsive qualities. And so, using a sports analogy, I would describe listening as when you're an active player on the field, you're involved in the competition, so to speak, and monitoring is more like being a sports spectator. You're more observational, you're watching what's going on, making observations. It is important to note that, again, while not one is better than the other per se, it's, I think, important to designate that we start to not utilize the term social media monitoring and social listening interchangeably necessarily. I think there's an opportunity here to acknowledge those as two separate practices. And social listening, as stated, is a more active process. And I think it's important that we start to distinguish these two procedures. And so why social listening? What's the rationale behind all of this? According to David Kerpen, who's the author of Likeable Social Media, quote, companies can no longer afford to ignore their customers' specific needs or complaints when the conversation can so easily be made public. Instead, they must listen, understand the issue, and respond appropriately. And I think this quote provides a great conversation starter. I've been teaching from David Kerpen's book for 4 years now. The original edition came out in 2013. The second edition came out in 2015. And I teach a course at the University of North Florida on strategic social media. So I typically share this quote with my students to invite some conversation. Why is it so important that we are listening? What are we going to get out of this process? And I think Kerpen in this quote reminds us that customers are everywhere. And as mentioned earlier in this webinar, they're having tremendous volume of conversations. And these conversations contain rich and valuable data that allow us to gather rich information. And so we can't pretend that pool of information doesn't exist. It is in our best interest to tap into that pool of information, harness it, and utilize it for great benefit. And we'll talk about several of those benefits a little later on. So what does social media contribute to? What is the purpose behind social listening, and what are some of the reasons why we should be doing it specifically? So looking over 7 reasons, Social Bakers published this article that includes these 7 items. So first and foremost, social listening contributes to an overall social media strategy. By listening to the members of your community, you're better able to devise a strategy that's successful for them. Second is brand reputation. And so by tuning into what's happening online, you're able to have a constant barometer on how your brand is faring reputationally. You're able to be mindful if there's any reputational threats. You're able to address them in real time. You're also able to tune into any positive or constructive conversations that are happening about your brand. Social listening is helpful for product development because it allows organizations to tap in to what kind of products are of interest or necessity to their consumers and gather helpful information from their marketplace about what kind of products or product features the marketplace is seeking. Social listening offers competitive insights because it allows for companies to tune into their competitors in a very seamless way. There's greater transparency now among competitors because of social media. And so social listening enables competitors to listen to the conversations that their competitors are having and listen to the conversations that are happening among the consumers of their competitors. Social listening is useful for benchmarking and performance measurement because it allows us to obtain different earmarks for where things are from a performance standpoint. In terms of benchmarking, social listening is helpful because it allows us to gather a sense of where we're starting from. It's a great springboard. So we're able to say, okay, as we're beginning to implement a strategy, or perhaps we're going to make a change to our strategy, it allows us to establish where we are and get a firm foundation. Using that foundation of where we are from a listening standpoint, in terms of things like influence and in terms of sentiment, we're able then to continue to feel out how the conversation goes and grows. From a performance measurement standpoint, whenever we implement a short-term campaign, for example, if we do a product launch or we do a rebrand with our logo and our colors, we're able to really tap into how that's being received and ultimately measure the campaign in terms of a point in time. So social listening allows us to have our ear to the ground throughout, but then also capture the smaller performances whenever we do a specific campaign. And lastly, social listening contributes to key influencers because it allows us to know who is talking about us, what are they saying, and what is the sentiment and intensity and polarity of what's being said. By sentiment, is the conversation positive, negative, or neutral? Polarity, is it positive, negative, or neutral? Where in terms of how, the tone, where is that? And then intensity, how deep is this? Is this sort of a mindless comment, or is this person genuinely really upset? Is somebody just making a generic statement, or did somebody truly have a bad experience with our brand or business that we need to address? We're able to really listen out for those influencers because those individuals have tremendous power within their networks. Ultimately, we want to make sure that our influencers are satisfied, and we want to empower those individuals to be brand ambassadors for us. So when we know who those individuals are, we're able to build strong relationships with them and continue to progress forward. When it comes to social listening, it has a particularly important relationship with how we use it to interact with our consumers or influence our consumer interaction. And so Forbes published an article where several items are noted in terms of how social listening affects consumer management and consumer response. So a few things: market overview. Social listening allows us to get a sense of what's going on in our market, the larger community within our industry. As discussed, it allows for keen competitive analysis. We can really go in and see what's going on with our competitors. We have a much greater transparency to view what they're doing. They can see what we're doing. And so it creates potentially a very healthy competition. And in a few minutes, we're going to talk more about several examples where we've seen some of that. Customer sentiment, we've also discussed the idea of polarity and intensity. Positive, negative, neutral. How do our customers truly feel about us? Are they satisfied? Are they happy? Pre-sale support and purchase signals. This is a big one here because ultimately we've seen a couple of brands do this really, really well. One example comes from Lay's potato chips. They are known for doing their Do Us a Flavor campaign. They created the hashtag Do Us a Flavor and embarked on a social media marketing and legacy advertising campaign to encourage their consumers to submit flavors to them. And so consumers were able to name a flavor, come up with 3 inspired ingredients and a chip style of choice, and submit those suggestions. And Lay's would take those suggestions and crowdsource them and utilize best suggestions to ultimately create competitions. People were able to vote which chip they liked the best. They were able to prototype some of the chips, put them out on the shelf in small batches, and really test drive and see what was going to work. And so, traditionally we would have to gather an enormous population, or as best we could, an enormous population to do things like product testing. And that could get very expensive. But by utilizing social media with Lay's Do Us a Flavor, they were really able to harness their market reach and do a lot of pre-sale support, do a lot of purchase signal support through this test driving with their products using this this Do Us a Flavor competition. It really was an exciting thing, and they've been able to continue to grow that pretty consistently. And have had a great following doing things of that nature. So Lay's is a great example. Another example with purchase signals and pre-sale support comes from Starbucks. Starbucks is well known for having a successful social media strategy. They have currently over 50 million followers across all of their social media platforms. And so back in 2009, they were really caught attention of the social media community because they offered a free pastry with a purchase of a coffee to all customers who came to their stores before 10:30. And so they did this push using social media marketing, and ultimately 1 million of their consumers took advantage of the opportunity for this promotion. So that was pretty epic. Well, Starbucks has created the MyStarbucksIdea.com, which is really an incubator for people who have ideas for Starbucks to contribute those ideas. And so by using the My Starbucks Idea, so far 500,000 people, 500,000 people have contributed to this. And so once again, we're seeing some great crowdsourcing efforts on social media by Starbucks. This is really helpful for pre-sale support and purchase signals. Lastly, customer service and retention. So we've obviously seen a number of examples lately in the airline industry where there's been just some customer service debacles, we'll say. And whether it's passengers fighting or people getting dragged off of planes or scorpions falling on passengers, the airline industry certainly has seen an opportunity to utilize social listening to improve customer service and retention. In fact, I mentioned earlier how social listening is really urgent due to our ability to use mobile devices and make content go viral. Well, NPR reported that within the first day of the viral video releasing in China of the gentleman being removed from the United flight, flight 3411, that video was viewed Initially, when the correspondent looked into this, the video had been viewed 120 million times. Within a half an hour, it went up to 130 million. And this correspondent continued to watch the growth of this video traffic throughout the day. And this was averaging a 20 million views per hour rate, which is just incredible. By the end of the day, it had an upwards of 200 million viewers in less than 24 hours. It was truly a remarkable thing. When we think about the power behind content being able to move that quickly, and how important it is from a brand management and reputation standpoint and consumer relations standpoint, there is just incredible power to social listening and what it's able to provide for us. So what are the benefits of social listening? Well, first and foremost, it gives companies a front row seat to any spontaneous chatter that's happening in the social media landscape. You've heard me say repeatedly that social listening allows for organizations to be tuned in at all times. And that's because the conversation on social media really doesn't stop. And that's what makes the ability to listen to it so powerful. It's, you look at a network like Facebook, you have over 1 billion people potentially communicating with one another. And so there's so much conversation happening. And so we're able to sit courtside. We're able to grab the ball when we need to. We're able to intercept. We're able to participate, jump into the game. It's really an exciting opportunity. It allows for easy competitive surveillance. This has come up multiple times throughout this webinar. And, just another example, thinking about the airline industry, when United had the crisis with removing the passenger from the plane, we saw that so many of the other airlines began to jump in and use that as an opportunity. And so Southwest, for example, we saw a meme come out on social media within hours that said, we beat the competition, not you. And so there's several things with just the way that from a surveillance standpoint, really in real time, we're able to go in and have these sort of fierce competitions and see, that, hey, our competitor, United Airlines, is in trouble. Well, we're going to take advantage of that opportunity and reach out, and we're going to use humor appeals, and we're going to use emotional appeals, and try and tap into customers who are in distress and offer them a solution, which is rather brilliant. Social listening helps uncover new opportunities. So we've talked about the Lay's opportunity with the potato chip flavors. We've talked about Starbucks using mystarbucksideas.com as an incubator for ideas for them. And so one never knows what sort of inspirations will come from allowing your consumers to be your think tank. The ability to test ideas quickly and receive real-time feedback. This was also discussed with the Lay's potato chip example as well. Being able to find out what might work, what might not work. Recently, there was an article in the Financial Post regarding the Pepsi ad that has created so much controversy. And so one of the suggestions that was made in the article was that Pepsi perhaps should have tested the ad with a small subset of its social media population before releasing the ad on a grand scale. And so there's an opportunity to test drive those ideas in front of small subsets of your community and get feedback right away. Traditionally, as mentioned, we'd have to create huge marketing groups and things like this, very costly and incredibly time consuming, potentially biased, but social media allows for a little bit more of a raw response. We're able to determine what consumers are thinking and act on it. And so we're able to listen in and find out, hey, what do consumers need and how can we answer to that? And traditionally, we were only able to do that at more of a macro level. But now we can get in and really nano target our clients individually because we know who they are individually. We're able to create a great balance between listening and talking. Once upon a time, as companies shared messages with their constituents, it was done through broadcasting. And so now we're able to listen in more, build more of an interpersonal relationship with consumers, and it allows for greater equity and greater balance between listening and those broadcasting messages, those mass messages. We're able to learn about consumers outside of their relationship to us. So it's been that we are able to see, hey, here's a consumer who buys this product. Here's a consumer who comes back and utilizes these services. However, we wouldn't necessarily know much about them beyond that in the limited scope we deal with them. Well, now we get to know the consumer as a whole being. We're able to see this person as a whole being and really understand more about who they are and what inspires them. So all of that information helps us to better answer to their needs and also understand their wants. So as we near the end of the webinar, let's discuss some of the outcomes of social listening. Many of these we've touched on in previous discussion, but this list brings it home. First, generating new leads by solving problems. Social listening allows us to be solution-oriented. It allows us to attract new customers and be consumer-oriented, really getting to know our consumers at an individual level, an individual basis. We're able to identify influencers and advocates using social listening, and these are incredibly powerful sources to expand our community and expand our reach. We're able to learn more about our community and where they hang out. So as mentioned earlier, the ability to learn more not only about individuals, but also groups. We have an opportunity to use social listening to improve customer care. And so as discussed, there's a tremendous push towards social customer service. We're seeing a lot of literature coming forward in the social media space regarding the use of bots for online customer service. So social listening allows us to understand more about the customer care strategy using social media and respond accordingly to best serve our audiences. We're able to get feedback on products. So we're able to test drive different ideas, different innovations, find out the likes and dislikes of our consumers and utilize that feedback to improve, ultimately to continue to best serve those who are our customers and continue to retain them. This was not discussed too much tonight, but social listening does provide great value when it comes to recruiting. The ability to find top talent utilizing social networks, particularly LinkedIn, is an incredible resource to recruiting and to being able to network with talent that may be of great value to your organization. And lastly, social listening contributes to driving innovation. One of the greatest outcomes of social listening is the ability to continue to learn, continue to attend to and make sense of and respond, interpret and respond to the variety of stimuli that are coming forward, and using those messages, those responses, that feedback to continue to pressure brand or business in a new direction, to continue to inspire great ideas and continue to inspire the best relationships with you and the consumers that you serve. So the outcomes of social listening are pretty powerful, pretty tremendous. The webinar, as we've gone through it today, consisted of a definition of social listening, compared that definition of social listening to that of traditional listening. We talked about the difference between social listening and social media monitoring, acknowledging that they are not interchangeable, but rather complementary. Then we began to look at the different purposes of social listening. We talked about the why and what social listening contributes to. We discussed the relationship between social listening and our consumer practices and discussed the benefits and outcomes of social listening. I hope you found this webinar to be beneficial to you, and I'm hopeful that you will join us to learn more. We actually have a course that will be starting up on June 1st that expands upon this webinar, and it's a short 4-part course experience that will allow you to tap into greater depth about the purposes of social listening, getting started and setting goals, combining social listening with measuring and evaluating, and then implementing a practical social listening process into your new or existing social media strategy. So this is an asynchronous course. You'll get 4 webinar videos and then 3 templates that you'll be able to complete and submit for review and feedback. I've included the link at the bottom of the slide here if you're interested in registering. You can visit us at nismonline.org/product YouTube.com/social listening course. I hope that this webinar has been very informative and beneficial for you, and I look forward to staying in contact with you as members of each other's professional network. I've included on this closing slide my email address, margaret@socially-inspired.com, as well as the link to my LinkedIn profile. My Twitter handle is @prof_marg_Stu, and you can find me on Facebook at Socially Inspired Consulting. We also encourage you to follow NISM if you do not do so already. Twitter handle @NISM Pulse, Facebook link here, as well as LinkedIn, Google+, and the nismonline.org website. If you have any questions about the webinar, please feel free to send me an email, and good luck with your social listening strategy.